Senator Jessica Ramos, thank you for your time here to talk to us about wage theft. You're a fierce fighter for the New York City worker. Can you tell me what it is that's inspired you to work so hard on their behalf?
So I've now been in the Senate for about 3 years, and I've chaired the Labor Committee in the state Senate for that time as well. And really what I've been trying to do is bring the hardships of everyday New Yorkers to the halls of power in order to change our labor laws and help make it a little easier for New York's workers. New York's workers have it really hard. There are a lot of bad actors, unfortunately, in different industries, not just the construction industry, that are trying to cut corners, that are trying to cheat workers out of their pay. We want an even playing field, and we want to promote good business ownership. And so all of these things to me come together, and it really is about making sure that workers feel protected and that workers feel they have a real voice on the job.
So can you give me an idea of what you believe wage theft does to that middle class worker right here in Queens?
You know, no one in New York can or should work for free. So every time a boss cuts a worker's hours or cheats them out of their overtime pay, lies to them about how much they will get paid, it really does a disservice to not only that worker, but the entire family and their entire community. So many small businesses depend on that disposable income in order to keep our streets vibrant. That family certainly depends on that income to keep a roof over their heads. And so when a boss takes away or cheats the worker out of their wages, they're really hurting us all as a group.
The current law that the Senate is talking about seeks to get penalties and fines up the management chain when wage theft is found.
So what we're trying to do with the construction wage theft bill is put liability of wage theft on the general contractor, since they're the ones who are in charge of hiring all of the other subcontractors, the ones who most notably are often the ones to steal wages from workers. So what we want is for that general contractor to make themselves responsible for hiring the very best and for hiring contractors who do good by workers, and which also means that they're paying their taxes.
Tax evasion is a huge story. Do you have any idea how much money New York is missing out on taxation because of wage theft?
Before the pandemic, the statistic was that the U.S. Department of Labor estimates wage theft in New York to be to the tune of $1 billion a year.
Wage theft seems like something that's easy to get away with. Is it a gateway crime to worse offenses against the worker?
It's hard to say whether the chicken or the egg came first. But I have, in my experience working in the construction industry and working in the legal industry before that, representing a lot of construction workers in on-the-job injury cases, that the same guys who cut corners on safety don't provide their workers with hard hats, don't provide their workers with training, usually are trying to cut corners elsewhere as well. And so they promise the worker a certain amount of money at the end of the week, then within 2 weeks they are coming up with excuses, or worse, they get a bounce check. The subcontractor changes their LLC, and it's impossible to determine who actually owes this worker their wages. This is why we're going after the general contractor. Usually always stays known, and that general contractor should be responsible for everyone else hired on that job.
If wage theft is this big and corrosive, there are crimes that happen that are worse. There are few of them, but related to safety. I'm going to read you a list of names. Juan Chanillo, Paul Salinas, Manuel Colorado, Angel Munoz, Claudio Patino, Eric Mendoza, Gregory Echeverria, Luis Mata. All of them died on non-union work sites. Most of those work sites have been cited for safety regulation. How do we do a better job of protecting not just the wages of these guys, but their lives?
You know, another pre-pandemic statistic is that here in New York, a construction worker was dying on the job every 5 days. And 88% of those workers are from right here, Jackson Heights and Corona, Queens. So for us, this is a very personal and very hurtful conversation because I think for those of us who are Latino especially, we tend to feel that many construction bosses think that we are dispensable or even, invisible. And that is certainly not the case. What we're trying to do is make the construction industry better. What we're trying to do is save lives. We want every single worker to return home to their family every night, as it should be. And what we should be doing is increasing the penalties for unscrupulous contractors and unscrupulous real estate developers who've been taking advantage of all of us for far too long.
I want to talk about the developers. These are the guys who put up the money behind the projects, and they're sort of one step above that general contractor. Some of them are openly anti-union. They set the tone about cutting costs. Do they have any liability for what's happening in this $45 billion industry?
Real estate developers absolutely have liability. Look, before becoming an elected official, before running for office, I took on Michael Stern at JDS. I took on Steve Valiotis at Alma Realty. We want to build union, we want to build safe, we want to build here in New York in a way that builds not only affordable housing for our middle class, but that the people who are building that affordable housing can actually afford to live in our city too. It shouldn't be such a radical idea. And this is why we have to go after those really bad developers who aren't working with the community, who aren't working with the workers to put forth the best possible plan.
How about the people who are shopping for real estate in New York City? Is there something that they can do or should know about what's happening both with the workers and with the buildings?
You know, as someone who aspires to afford to buy something in New York someday in my hometown, I wish that we as a culture are able to uphold ethical hiring and ethical employment as a personal standard for how we purchase things. This is why as labor movement members, we tend to buy union because it means something, because it supports those jobs. And we want that to transfer to the real estate industry as well. We want New Yorkers to buy units that were built union. We want New Yorkers to support the middle class.
So should a shopper ask their realtor who built this building?
I think that amongst the many questions that a shopper asks their real estate broker should be, hey, how was this building built? Who built it? Did anybody get hurt building this building? These are characteristics that I think should go into the new criteria of real estate shopping here in New York.
When you think about these poor guys who are working and they don't know if they're going to be paid and they're not being given helmets or lanyards for safety, and how are you going to do your best work under that situation?
No hard hats, no harnesses, no training, sometimes no ladders. Sometimes instead of being paid with money, they're paid in beer and bottles of wine, which is the most insulting part. It has driven, unfortunately, the quality of life for many of our day laborers straight to the ground. And this is why everything that the building trades have been doing, that the organization NICE and so many other day labor organizations have been doing in working together and really uplifting standards across both union and non-union jobs, in my opinion, is the only way that we can fight open shop in New York.
Contractors look for undocumented workers, people who come here often from Central America who have skills, but who have a vulnerability of deportation. Can you talk a little bit about how that audience might be especially vulnerable and agree to do things that they shouldn't?
They put themselves in these positions, in these risky positions of getting hurt or worse, losing their lives, unfortunately, many times because they need the work. And this is why I talk about the desperation for work so much. We shouldn't be driven, nobody should be driven to the point of accepting anything that is subpar to the typical working standards here in New York.